Welcome to the section 6 of our C programming course, and in this section, this is a dedicated section for arrays. So far in our previous sections, from section 1 to section 4, the concepts that we have learned are completely related to build logics. Now from now on, the concepts that we are going to understand, the way we are going to understand the concepts from now on is going to be a bit different. So how we are going to understand is, we will understand the concepts with respect to the memory. Means every line of code, after executing each line of code in the programs from now on, we will understand what happens on the memory. We need to have that kind of visualization, because that visualization will help you understand the other basic courses like data structures and algorithms. So this kind of understanding will help you a lot in the later coming courses like data structures and algorithms. Now in this class, we will have an introduction to the arrays, and we will understand how to store hundreds of variables in C programming language. So let's get started with the definition of arrays. What it states is, an array is a fixed size collection of elements of the same data type stored in a contiguous memory locations. And each element in the array can be individually accessed using an integer called an index. So what is an array? And by this way, you may not be able to understand. So it looks, we will try to understand this definition by using a practical real world example. For example, if I want to store the marks of a students in a class, let's assume that there are 3 students in a class. I want to store the marks of those students in my program. How can I do that? With the knowledge that we are having previously, how can we store the marks of 3 students in an existing class? We need to declare 3 different variables. Here we have declared int, I want to store the marks of 3 students. So for this I have declared A marks, B marks and C marks. 3 variables are declared. What if we need to store 100 student marks? So do we need to create 100 variables for each student? So means 100 variables, so that each variable can be allocated for each student in a class. That is not practical, right? So creating 100 variables itself is going to take a lot amount of time, and it is not practical. So to address these kind of problems, we have a feature in every programming language. That feature is what we call it as arrays. So let's understand the concept of arrays with the declaration, how to declare an array and how to access the array elements and all. We first understand the declaration of an array. So this line of code, first we will try to understand this, and in the process of understanding all these concepts, we will go back and understand the definition again. So this is how the arrays can be declared. So the name of the variables is student. The variable name is students underscore marks. And whenever we declare an array, we have to provide these square brackets, and within these square brackets, we have to mention the size of an array. Means this array is of size 100 elements. And what are the data types of those elements? The data type of those elements is integer. Here I have declared int students underscore marks, and every time you want to create an array, you want to declare an array, we have to give square braces. And now within those square braces, we have to mention the size. So this is how a declaration of the array happens. Okay. Now let's visualize this in a very simpler possible way. So this is the kind of visualization that we are going to have. This is the basic visualization that we are going to have with respect to the arrays. Now see here, this diagram, this entire big square box, within that we are having multiple partitions. Okay. Now each partition is corresponding to an element in an array. Now how many numbers on the top of this box? We are having these numbers. So what are these numbers? And these numbers are starting from 0, and they are going to end till 99. So in this case, these many number of boxes are created. So their total of 100 elements, we can store a total of 100 elements within this array, and these numbers through which we are going to access the element in this array is called as an index. This is the index of an array. By using this index, we can access a particular element within this array. Okay, so now accessing array elements. So how to access these array elements by using this variable name is, so this is how we can access the elements, access the array elements. It is name of the variable, and we have to mention within the square brackets, we have to mention the number. Now with this number, what happens is, I want to access an element which is stored in the index 5. So student marks 5 means I want to access the value of the element which is stored exactly at the index 5. So let's assume that here if you are having 37, what is that we are going to access? We are going to access the value 37 by using its index. Index is the point through which we can access the elements of the array. Okay, so this is how the elements of the array can be accessed. Now, how can we initialize the values into the array? The initialization of the values can be done while declaring the array itself, and they can also be done after declaration of the array. That we will try to understand in our later coming classes. At this point of time, while declaring the array, how to initialize the values also. So that we will try to understand. So this is how the initialization of array is done. We have to use these curly braces, and within these curly braces, whatever the number of elements are there, those number of elements are to be provided. So let's assume that we are having 100 elements. All the 100 elements are to be provided separated by comma. So whenever compiler identifies a comma, it understands that this value 10, the first value 10 is assigned to the 0 index. So here the 10 will get stored, and if you take the next value 15 after the comma, so it will get stored in the index 1, and the next value will get stored in index 2. So this is how the initialization of an array will be done while declaring the array itself. Okay, so this is how initialization of an array is done. Now we will go back to our array and we will try to understand this concept. So an array is a fixed size collection. See here the number of elements in the array are fixed. They are 100. Now as we are having a requirement of 100 elements, the array of elements, or we are having 100 elements in our array, and each element of elements of the same data type. All these elements in the array are of same data types. Okay, and stored in a contiguous memory locations. So if you take these memory locations, so all these elements are continuously stored on the memory. So on your memory, all these elements are continuously stored. So we will get the complete visualization of these concepts, how continuously the memory elements will get stored. We will have a detailed understanding of this memory. This is just for simple understanding of visualization of memory. In our next class, we will understand in detail how these elements will get stored on the memory in reality. That we will try to understand in our next coming classes. So at this point of time, this is how the memory, the values of the array will continuously get stored on the memory. Each element of the array can be individually accessed using an integer. So this is the integer by which we can access the elements in that array, element in that particular location. To access the elements within that particular location, we need to have the index. Okay, so this is the basic understanding. This is just an introduction to the array. In the next coming class, we will understand how the memory, how the array elements will get stored on the memory. So that's it for this class. See you in the next class.